Welcome to Cordell and Cordell's Men's Divorce Podcast, moderated by Managing Partner and CEO Scott Trout, bringing you information for guys before, during, and after divorce, and everything related to family law. This podcast is not to be taken as legal advice, and no attorney-client relationship is established.
Welcome back to the Men's Divorce and Cordell podcast. As always, I'm Scott Trout, Managing Partner, CEO of Cordell and Cordell. And today we're going to focus a lot on just fatherhood, what it means to be a dad, a father, what comes along with that. Give us, our opinions, our thoughts on it. It's such a broad topic. We could talk for a long time, but we're just going to highlight some of the things that maybe not just professionally, but personally as well. So we're joined by Patrick down in Dallas. Welcome today.
Welcome, Scott. Thank you.
Hey, if you have any questions as we go along, though, check us out at cordellcordell.com or give us a call at 866-DADS-LAW. You can check us out on social media. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. You can do that across all platforms, including iTunes as well. All right, Patrick, we were just talking just very briefly off camera about fatherhood, and it's a really good segue. I was just a guest on the podcast, The Art of Fatherhood. And if you haven't checked it out, you should check it out. It's a great podcast. And Art, who actually runs the podcast, and we were talking about what it means to be a dad and that father-child relationship and what it meant to me personally. I have 5 kids, and they're all grown for the most part as it is. But I think it's sometimes when you get the perspective of maybe a little bit of both from an attorney, that we can talk a little bit about what that means to be involved. I think it's a good segue. So you can check out my podcast on the art of fatherhood. We talked a lot about that, and there's some other dads on there that just generally talk about what it means. So let's start there, Patrick, kind of what it means to you, kind of the idea of fatherhood, and maybe your perspective personally.
Thank you. Well, when I was a father for the first time, a friend of mine said, it's the hardest job you'll ever love. And I really found that to be true. It's the greatest job. I love being a father, very proud to be a father, but it is, an effort to be a good father, I think. And we have a lot of clients come in here, and I tell them my experience, and I try to share with them how important it is that it's not just from a legal point of view, certain things that we would look for in a case, but also, hey, this is life. You've got to be a good father to your children. And that's the most important thing you can do. It's the most important job.
Yeah, totally. And it's, not just from the emotional perspective. Obviously, there are studies out there, and I've talked a lot about it, about the need for a 2-parent home. And, I've been interviewed many times, from Fox News to Wall Street Journal to CNN about, are you just about dads and only about dads, and to the exclusion of the other parent, the mom? And I'm like, no, I'm actually pro-family. And that is, I think each bring a role to the nurturing, the development, psychological, physical development of kids. I mean, that's huge. Don't you agree?
Agreed. And, I find the word I most commonly use in my practice is co-parenting, so no one really does it alone. And so you rely on the other parent, you work with the other parent, and you work with the whole family unit, to do what's best for the children. So.
Totally. I mean, it is. And that's why I think we talk a lot about dads and the time that they spend and trying to maximize their time and fighting for their time, because it's not just about dads. It's about their interest. As you said, it's the most difficult thing you'll ever love and the hardest thing you'll ever love. And you play such a critical role. And being a dad and being involved, it's such a general term, being involved, father. It means so many different things. So kind of what do you think? What is it, your perspective of what kind of being involved father means?
And there's different roles and different steps and different stages. I think, obviously there's the, what I would call more of the logistical issues of, making sure that the child, preparing meals and taking care of the child's, baths, but helping the child read and develop skills as a young child. And then it progresses, I think, to being more of an emotional support for your child, to encourage your son or daughter in school and their social activities, to provide that encouragement. And there's also the role model aspect of it, I think, too. Children, they learn from what they see. So it's important to be a good role model for the children, too.
100%. It's funny. One of the first questions I was asked on the Art of Fatherhood podcast was kind of what was my first thought when my first child was born. And I said something like, well, where's the instruction manual? Because, we're all, we all have a dad, whether they're involved or not, whether they're part of our life or not. But I think the key is why there is none and no right way of doing it is that every father parents differently and plays differently, right?
Exactly. Yeah, there's no one size fits all. And when you find that manual, please let me know because I've looked for it. I can't find it either. But yeah, there's no one size fits all. So that's with every child, every parent, every family is different. So I think that's why you really have to listen, be involved with your child and see what they're about and see what their interests are and what help they may need or what you can do to assist them in this journey. It is a journey not just for the child, but it's a journey for both the parent and the child and the entire family.
And for me personally, it's interesting. All 5 of my kids are different in some respects, and they all respond differently. They're motivated differently. And then there's some crossover in terms of my parenting style, in terms of what I do. And that's what I think is maybe a challenging thing, is to learn what that parenting style should be for your kids. But, it is about communication and building confidence and obviously the discipline, right?
Right. Yes. I mean, you don't want to be, it's a balance. I mean, a lot of times I think in prior generations, fathers were looked upon as just wait till your father comes home and you'll find out. And that's really thankfully and rightfully evolved into more of a co-parenting situation. So there's all those roles of not just teacher, moral support, moral guidepost, but also disciplinarian. And you want to be fair. And a lot of studies have showed that, fathers have a very important role in disciplining their children and helping them develop into better adults based upon what they can bring to all those aspects of, fatherhood. So, yeah,
I mean, it's funny. I've got my oldest to youngest are separated by 10 years. And so, parenting never stops. It's kind of funny. It just transitions to adult child problems, and I'm dealing with my oldest and, he has work issues and we're trying to work through that. But everything you do presumably is to prepare them for the real world, right?
Exactly. I think you're laying the foundation for your child not to be, you're working on not just to help him be a good child, but also be a good adult. And you want him to give him all the tools he needs. So when the time comes, he can, take what you've given him, what you've taught him, the support you've given him, to then transition to his role, maybe someday as a father too. So that's an important aspect of being a good father, is not just doing the things that we do on a daily basis to help our child, but then helping them grow and helping them have the skills and the background necessary to be a good member of our society. I think
it's interesting you talk about preparing them for the real world, and each one of my kids reacted differently to this that I've always kind of taught them, and that is early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. If you follow those 3 things, when you're doing whatever it may be, a job or showing up for a party or a reservation, early is on time is late is unacceptable. It's funny, you think of that and we've just ingrained that, and some of them react and, he's always there 15, 20 minutes early for anything and everything. And the other one is, he doesn't really get it yet. But it is funny how that kind of thing, moms and dads are very different. They're very different in their parenting styles. When you say they co-parent, because they each bring something different to the table. And that is not something my wife would do, that she wouldn't think of trying to, I guess, ingrain that notion of timeliness and being prompt and is important. She does something different. So I think, as you say, everyone has a role, which is amazing, but they're equally important. And that leads me to talk about, and I've talked a lot about this, parental alienation syndrome versus child estrangement. What kind of walk us through what those are when it comes to fatherhood and parenting?
Well, really, in this, oftentimes you'll see in our careers, in our profession here with Cordell, is that fathers come in, they feel like they've been alienated from their children. Now, unfortunately, that happens a lot. And I've had some family members, personally, who've been alienated from their children, and I've seen it firsthand, and it's tragic. But not every time there's problems, in a relationship with your child, it's not always alienation. So you really have to look at all the factors and see what's going on in that case. Usually the issue is, is the gatekeeper, whoever may be really with the child, are they taking steps to push or move the child away from the other parent? is that, what we would call the aligned parent or the gatekeeper doing things inappropriately with the child that affects the other parent. But as the other parent, are they doing all they can do? Has there been any abuse? Has there been any bad behavior? Anything that would possibly cause the alienation or estrangement? So so that's where it goes back to, I think, it ties back to being the involved parent. If you're involved with that child, you're laying that foundation to not, be susceptible to that. The child hopefully will be aware of your role and will maybe not be susceptible to those external factors from the gatekeeper that would affect your relationship with your child.
Labels, they're just that. And they don't adequately describe necessarily the event, the occasion, whatever it may be. And it just happens to be PAS, it's labeled under the DSM as that, but it's different. Sometimes, it is slung around, she's guilty of parental alienation. But what does that really mean? Some of it's justified, some of it isn't. Some of it is, as you suggest, it may be gatekeeping or trying to be the favored parent that I give, lax curfews, or you can drink a beer at home, or you can smoke a cigarette. But dad then tries to instill something that are regular rules for age appropriate behavior. So it's interesting that you can toss that label around, but you just have to dig into it, right?
Right. And, sometimes people may call it alienation. It may be transitory. If a father, there are incidences where the child may act as if he's being, estranged from the other parent. It may be some environmental factor that's temporary, maybe a maturity, maybe other environmental factors. So what you have to really look for, is it a pattern? Is there something that's really, if the child at times will say, yeah, I don't like my father, but the next day they're, really good friends and they really show that affection, it's not probably really alienation. It's something that shows a consistent pattern where the aligned parent is really doing what they can do to interfere with that relationship. And that's what you have to be very conscious of.
And I've seen, over the years, this is my 31st year of practice, and I've seen the results of significant parental alienation where child doesn't want anything to do with dad at all for years and years. And it's destructive and unjustified, unwarranted. And it's so I do talk about a lot. And many times I'll say, I coincide parental alienation when you may or may not choose to move out of the house upon filing a divorce or considering a divorce. And I always say, be aware of that. And that kind of spills into the idea of, why should you be involved as a dad? What is the payoff? What are the results? And parental alienation kind of spills into that a little bit about being present, being aware, being able to counter anything that may be said, not in a way that hurts the other parent, but tries to make them understand, right?
Right. And many studies have shown, and, a lot of experts will tell you that, having two involved parents is the most important thing in a child's life to ensure that they're a good adult. And it's not just for the child, but it's also for the parent. I mean, studies have shown that, involved parents tend to be healthier, more mentally stable, and do better in their careers and their lives because they have that role that they really acquired and they've really nurtured. And it's good for both the children and both, the parent and the child both.
Totally. It is, you focus on a parent is like, I'm doing this for them, education, training, sports. I mean, you're traveling, but there is the payoff for you. And I think it is that reciprocal relationship. It's not a one-way thing. It may seem like it because you're writing checks and you're an ATM machine,
right?
And you got to deal with the bad things that happen and the discipline, and it's crazy. But it's got to be high on the list of priorities in order for you to do it. Because when we talk about it as lawyers, and we always say be involved, I think it's easy for guys to look at that and think, be involved because it's to your legal advantage and it decreases your child support. But there's this genuine two-way reciprocal relationship with payoff on both sides.
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, It's not just about child support. It's not just about winning a court case. It's really, being the parent that, hopefully you wanted to be, and being there for your child and doing whatever it takes to make sure that they know that they're supported by you emotionally and, and morally and all the right ways to know that you're doing all you can do to make sure that young person is going to turn out to be a young adult.
Yeah. Patrick, great stuff. Appreciate your perspective personally and professionally for our viewers and listeners. So thanks for joining today.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
In this occasion, we talk about, fatherhood, and there's this blend when we talk about being involved in custody and fighting for a role. I think this is the kind of thing that we at Cordell like to prepare you for, because you can even talk about this to a judge about why it's important you be a dad, why it's important what role you play. And so this is why I thought this was such a great topic today as we talk about dads in general. So again, thanks for joining.
My pleasure.
We'll continue to tune into our podcast for topics just like this. And don't miss out on our virtual town hall. We have one every month. We have one coming up here in September. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check us out on our website at CordellCordell.com or across social media. It's free. All you have to do is register, and you get to go online and have a live session with a panel of Cordell and Cordell attorneys. We'll talk about really unique topics. I think this month we're talking about celebrity divorces and how they can relate to you, because there may be more money, but in the end, everything's the same. So continue to tune in, and don't forget, it's not legal advice. Set up a consultation. That's the best way to get legal advice. You can do that on our website at CordellCordell.com. You don't even have to pick up the phone. You can schedule a consult right from the convenience of your computer, your laptop, your iPhone, whatever it is, your Android. So continue to check us out or give us a call, 866-DADS-LAW. Until next time, have a great week.